Well, welcome everybody. This is the Instructional Design and Learning SIG. We are a community of practice. We talked about that a little bit earlier before the webinar started. We run a webinar series, and today for our webinar in March, we have a special treat for everybody that is planning to do any kind of virtual conference attendance or pretty much any kind of virtual event at all. Kelly is her subject for today, as you know, is engineering your network experience. I have seen Kelly present this live back when we used to go face to face, and it was about how to do the networking in a face to face environment. But today, I think Kelly is going to expand it into our current new reality, right? And this is going to get us ready for Spectrum 2021. If you have questions about Spectrum 2021, just email me and I'll put you in touch with the Spectrum crew. They're very excited about it. Let me talk a little bit about Kelly. Kelly has been a technical and a medical communicator for over 20 years. Through her business, Bookworm Editing Services, she is the head bookworm. She brings consistency, structure, and clarity to her clients' content, regardless of whether she's writing content like a blog or a style guide or standard operating procedure, editing formulary dossiers, manuscripts, proposals, slide decks, and training materials. And as you know, Kelly is an associate fellow in STC, and she's a Bell certified editor in the life sciences. She has presented on checklists. I've attended most of these. Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, editing. She has side gigs, and she's presented on networking in webinars and conferences face-to-face, and this virtual one like today. So Kelly, we're pretty excited about what you have to share with us. I'm going to ask everybody to turn off your camera if possible. It will make our recording a little bit better, and I'll do that first. And now, Kelly Schrank, let us know. We need to know.
Thank you, Vicki. And let me know about the video. You want me to turn mine off too? Or does that?
You can leave yours on, and that way it will spotlight you.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I wasn't sure what you meant with the recording. So hi, everyone. We've been chatting for a little bit here, those who are here, but thanks for coming to the webinar. This is a great time of year for the session because there are many conferences to attend. Within the STC community, there are two virtual conferences next month, April 17th to the 19th. We have Spectrum, which is their 62nd conference. It includes a workshop day, a leadership program, and a full day of sessions on Monday. The Rochester chapter holds this conference, and they're also co-hosting this event today. And the Philly Metro chapter is having their first unconference conduit on April 10th, and it's also virtual. So there's a lot going on in April. And then in June, we have Summit, the International STC Conference, which is June 5th to the 9th. And they have workshops and I think 3 days of sessions as well. And I'm sure there's a lot of people here who are probably speaking at that, including myself. So this session should help get you in the right state of mind for upcoming conferences, community events, and other networking events you might be interested in. Even local events are now online. I know the Rochester chapter is having virtual events as well. So you have plenty of opportunities to practice what I'm going to go over with you. And if you hate networking, or if you just think you should go to events for the educational opportunities, I think you could really be missing out. So hoping you're going to take a little bit of this to heart, take it with you to your next networking event. And I'm not going to go through all of this because Vicki covered a lot of it. But I have, been around STC for quite a while. I've been a technical writer and editor for a long time. And I do like to speak at conferences and webinars to share my knowledge. I like to network with other communicators. So if we're not already connected, please reach out after the event with questions or comments. I'll have my contact information on the last slide. And it's also in the handout, which Vicki has already provided. So this presentation has gone through many iterations. I created a similar presentation for the company where I used to work. They had fellows and they wanted someone to help them get ready to go to a couple of conferences. And the fellows would need to network to find jobs and navigate their careers. And they would need to help not yet fellows. They would meet to take the next steps in their careers, including possibly taking their places as fellows in the company that I worked. So there were two fellows, and of course, I mean this like, like we have associate fellows and fellows. These are not just males. There's it's a designation within the company of a fellow. And their mentors were concerned that they were very shy. Not just shy, but very shy. Not just reserved, but very shy is what they said. So I presented a similar deck to them, which I hope was helpful. And the next year, I was asked to present it again. And so I updated it a little bit and presented it to the next couple of fellows. And then in 2017, I was the AMWA annual conference chair. And if you don't know who AMWA is, it's the American Medical Writers Association, which is kind of a sister organization to STC on the medical communication side. And I created another deck with some of the same information, the same kind of message to it. I added some audio to it and then posted it to the website for the attendees to watch before they went to the conference. So again, just trying to get people ready. What can they do to prepare to network at the conference? And when Vicki saw me at the Interchange conference in 2018, they had an engineering theme. And it seemed like a good fit for what I proposed in this presentation, which is when the title and some of the structure came to be. And here are a couple of not very good pictures of me presenting the session, which was in person, of course, and had a bit more interactivity than we have today. I had a bit more people trying to chat with each other and a bit less of some of the content you'll see today. But in a webinar, especially the one that I just did for STC in January, they were not going to have this open chat like we do in this session. So I'd kind of prepared a lot of content. So I'll share that with you today, but hopefully I'll go through this quick enough that we can still have some chat at the end. So now, of course, so much has changed and I've updated it again and added quite a bit more to it so that it'd be more pertinent to the new virtual world we're living in. But why do I keep coming back to it? This topic of networking as an introvert. And a couple of reasons, mostly personal. I'm an introvert, I know a lot of you in this group, even without knowing some of you, are probably also introverts just by nature of the fact that you're in this, that you're in this profession. It tends to attract a lot of introverts. And the other reason is probably because I was so bad at networking, when I first started my professional career. Am I still awkward and, not everyone's cup of tea? Sure. So, but I don't let that stop me from getting out there. And I don't think you should let it stop you. So if that's one of your reasons you don't want to network, then please, let's just step on past that. And I have some ways to help you out with that. So hopefully this will be helpful to you and we can get into it. So let's get started by looking at what we're going to cover today. You'll see the usual intro at the beginning, summary at the end, and then the middle part is where it says before, during, and after. That's kind of the meat of the presentation. And I've put some bonus material in here to help you with the activities that I'm proposing. And all the resources I've used for the presentation are in the handout, which has already been provided, and a couple of emails, so you ought to be able to find it. Vicki's going to be monitoring the chat for me, as we said. And, she'll bring questions to me, hopefully at the end. But I did have some time set aside, so we'll see how that goes. And lastly, I'll have a slide at the end with my contact information if you want to connect or follow up later. So before we get too far into this, one thing that I like to talk about is that I want you to think about networking the same way you think about your job. So most of us would agree that we enjoy what we do for a living. Like, why would you continue to do it otherwise? But who always enjoys their job, right? Like not every hour of every workday. Sometimes you have a tough topic or an uncooperative SME. Maybe you don't have all the information you need and you're a little uncomfortable or anxious, but that's normal, right? I mean, that's work. That's why they have to pay us. So despite that, you stick around because things are good. You like what you do. It's better than the alternative. And you do what you can to make some of these tough parts better with things that we're good at: preparation, research, a little hard work, because ultimately the benefits are there. So that's how I'd like you to try to think about networking. There will be, I promise you, good networking moments when you connect with someone and you have a laugh and you're glad you came. And there might be some awkward moments when there's not a fit or you feel uncomfortable. But I'm going to encourage you to network anyways, because you know that getting to know other people in your industry or your profession or your workplace is good for you and your career. That's all networking is. Getting to know other people, creating community, creating a network, because you're human, which we're all finding just how human we are in the pandemic, and you need it. But also because you're a professional and your career needs it. You need to have a network around you. So what is networking? So we'll start with this dictionary.com definition: a supportive system of sharing information and services among individuals and groups having a common interest. That doesn't sound so bad, does it? I mean, isn't that what we're doing when we have these meetings with our STC communities and friends, at the national conference, at the regional conferences, at these meetings like this? So why do we complicate it? Why do people make networking out to feel so like it's such a terrible thing? So I have a little poll here, and it's kind of a joke. So why should we network? And if you just want to, put A, B, C, D in the chat, that'll be pretty quick for me to glance over there and see what everybody thinks. And maybe this is a little simple, but I'm just going to assume it's because you guys are really smart. So if you answered all of the above, which is D, then you're right. Very simply, as humans and as professionals, we need to network in order to build relationships, learn from others, and share ideas. Now, notice I didn't say you need to network to find jobs, to move ahead in your careers, or be pawns in the hands of others who would like to use you for their own motives. If you network and you have a network in which you build relationships, learn from others, and share ideas, you will probably at some point find a job or a contract or figure out a way to move ahead or move to a better job. But it won't be because you're transactional about it. It won't be because you went to a meeting and asked a stranger to find you a job. It's more nuanced than that. And I know a lot of you here know this already because I know you. But just something to keep in mind. If you hate those transactional folks who try to sell you as soon as they meet you or as soon as they connect with you on LinkedIn, then why would you do that? Why would you try to be like that? And I don't think, and I know many of you, I don't think you're like that. But this is just things to think about. So again, probably a really easy poll, but you're probably going to do well because I just think you're a really smart bunch. Why should you network virtually? Just go ahead and type in the chat again. We'll see what everybody thinks. And then we'll go over the answer. I love how Vicky likes, it has to make the letter stand for something. Thank you for making this more interesting. So why network virtually? Because the obvious, well, that's all we have right now. I get it. But there really are some advantages to virtual networking over in-person networking, especially for us introverts. First here is that virtual events really level the playing field. You might meet someone from anywhere in the world, or from a remote area that might not normally be able to attend. For those of you not near a major city, or who have childcare or other issues, virtual events might be your only chance to meet peers from outside your workplace, or maybe at all. And secondly, some of the financial hurdles are taken away. While conferences may not be free, many chapter, community of interest, or community of practice programs are free or have a small fee. And if you do attend a conference, there's no travel expenses, and really you get more for your money than you would as an in-person event, because you can actually attend all the sessions that you have time to attend, as many or most, including an event like this, are usually recorded. And there's no more wishing you could attend 3 sessions that are all at the same time period, because you can watch them whenever you want. And there's no more like, the last session, there were 3 I wanted to see, and this session, there's really nothing I'm interested in. Now what am I going to do? So you get rid of some of that. And even if you can't attend any of the sessions in real time, in many conferences, you can still watch the sessions later. And there's still many ways to network through a lot of the platforms that are out there, even if it's just like you're doing today in the chat. So third, even though there is Zoom fatigue in some circles, even introverts, come on, are beginning to feel a craving for human interaction right now. We're all feeling pretty stuck in our houses, and really, looking for some connection. And so people might just be more open to connecting virtually than they would have in the past. And lastly, because the lines between work and home are blurred, some folks may be more open to online events after hours, or they might be able to drop into a virtual event during work hours. Remote workers may have more flexibility with their schedules that allow them to attend events. Obviously, this isn't true for everybody. If you've got your kids there and your spouse there, and you're feeling like life is chaotic, maybe that it doesn't work as well for you. But I think that some people are finding a little more openness to being able to attend events than they would have in the past. So this, I think, is a great time to explore networking virtually. So here's a couple of myths that I want to dispel before we get any further. And the first one's, other people like networking. I'm weird for not liking it. Like, this is like classic introvert kind of thing. And I'm going to tell you that the truth is that most people still hate it. Introverts make up half the population. They dread networking events. I'm going to show you how to get around that by, going to the right events, which you're doing right now. But I just like to bring that up right at the start, so we're on the same page. Networking myth number 2, some people are magically good at it. There's something wrong with me because I'm not. No, that's not true at all. There are humans that are magically charismatic and they get along well with everyone. Everyone else works at it. And once you work at something, you become better at it. And once you become better at it, you might even start to enjoy it. Not only that, but many of the things I'm going to ask you to do before and after the event are things you're good at. So it's not all things that are uncomfortable for you. So if you think about the whole process, there's actually parts that we're good at. So let's tackle the before. I'm going to break this out into 3 stages of your networking experiences. These are 3 things to do before you go to a networking event. So number 1, I want you to choose the right networking event. Am I suggesting you go to a Chamber of Commerce meeting if you have your own business? A network after work meetup with just random people? Any kind of random networking meeting that some company somewhere puts together? No, especially if you're not good at it. If you're not enjoying it, if you're at the session, then yeah, no, probably not. Your best bets are events like this with like-minded folks where you already have things in common. So meetup.com has every topic imaginable, virtual events, in-person events. I mean, if you are a Trekkie or if you're a hiker or if you like Star Wars, like whatever you're whatever you're into, whatever geeky thing you like, you're going to find some people and they're going to have the same interest in you. You're going to have something to talk to them about. And you might not think of that as professional networking, but I have met people that have helped me professionally in my personal life by doing other, different kinds of activities. So that might be an option. Similar organizations, like, you're at an STC event right now. I mentioned earlier the American Medical Writers Association. The Board of Editors in the Life Sciences has events if you're an editor in the life sciences. ATD is probably a good bet for some of you who are in training. IABC is business communicators. There's other organizations and events that cater to writing, editing, training, UX, and the like. For women in the group, there's women's leadership groups. For those like me who have their own businesses, there are entrepreneur groups, and there's Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups. They might have chats or other events to join. There's just a lot of different places you can go to meet other people who have similar interests to you. And when you do find a goal, when you do find an event to go to, perhaps it will help you to have a goal to motivate yourself. And being engaged and knowing what's going on makes it easier to formulate your goals for the event. So if there's any social media before the event, you might want to check that out. You want to read emails that come in, see who's attending, who's speaking. If having a goal works for you, then do it. So some of the goals you might think about are, especially at a conference, like who are people you might want to meet? Are there topics you want to learn about? And these topics they may not even be sessions about it, but you might just talk to people and get their feedback on something that you're interested in. Do you have questions for specific speakers about certain topics? What do you want to accomplish at the networking event? And some people like to use numbers as goals, kind of gives them an out when they're ready to leave. Do you want to meet or chat with 5 people? Do you want to stay for an hour? You want to ask questions to a presenter? Like, what would keep you engaged? And, what could you do to motivate yourself when you're at the session or the conference or the event, whatever it is? Now, this preparation, to me, are things you can do in the couple of days before you attend. So for the first bullet, this can include small talk about the webinar, what you're hoping to get out of the conference, things you'd like to learn, people you'd like to meet, some of the things you learned in your research, what you're looking forward to in the event. You want to kind of work these into answers and questions. And, the more awkward you feel, maybe the more preparation you do. When I was first starting out, I was writing a lot of things down just to try to help myself, or I would, go through things in my head before I, go to an event. So for the second bullet, you want to practice some of the answers to common questions. And you can do this in your head or you can do it out loud. It just kind of matters how you feel. But if you're looking for a job or if you're consulting like me and you're always looking for a job, you want to, either practice your elevator speech, specific to that goal and that audience. And if you need to, write it down, practice it, say it a few times. Just think of your audience who may be different with the different events you go to. And for the third bullet, think of questions you might have for other people, especially if you've done a little research on who's speaking or attending. You can rehearse, if there's going to be opportunities to turn on your mics and chat with folks. But another nice thing about virtual events is that sometimes all you have is the chat. And we're pretty good as a group at writing and typing, right? So again, these virtual events, they really work out for us. So this slide and the one that follows are bonuses, as noted by the little gift icon. So I got an e-newsletter from Rob Walker, the author of The Art of Noticing, 131 Ways to Spark Creativity, Find Inspiration, and Discover Joy in the Everyday. He has a regular feature called Icebreakers, and this Google Doc is what he's accumulated. And this is in the handout. And I'm wondering if anybody knows who he is, reads his book, has read his book, which is sitting over here in my my bookshelf. I've looked at it a little bit. I haven't gotten through it yet, but it's got some good stuff in there. And it's not a book that you read straight through anyways. It's kind of one of those, you pick it up and you get some ideas and you put it back and come back to it. But what I like about this list of icebreakers is that the readers of his newsletter, in the book are probably kind of more introverts like us. We're thoughtful, detail-oriented, looking for deeper connections with like-minded folks. So if you're looking for ideas for conversation starters or questions to ask others, this might have some ideas for you. So another little bit of bonus material here, and believe me, I know one of the worst things for an introvert is to talk about ourselves. It can be excruciating, especially if we haven't prepared at all, which of course, you saw what I just said, right? You should try to prepare at least a little bit. But here are some tips about ways that you can talk about yourself to give the people you're talking to a little something to work with. Because I know that I tend to be like, oh, I'm a tech writer and editor, and that's like awkward. And especially you come to an event like this, we're all technical communicators. So what are you going to say? But so some of the ideas are to lead with passion, to talk about what you do that you love at your job. Don't talk about the title, don't talk about the company. Like, what do you love about your job? The other idea is to talk about all your gigs. So maybe you have a full-time job that pays the bills, but you have the side gig doing something that you love. Say, oh, I'm a tech writer. I work for so-and-so, but my freelance work is in developing newsletters or websites or whatever. I love to create the perfect site for a small business. So just give people something to work with besides the usual, name, title, company. You might also mention your skills. So kind of lead with your skills and how you use them at work. If you're an editor like I am, you're like, I like to bring structure to chaos. Like this is my favorite thing is the before and after. So you can just kind of bring something to it that gives people a reason to be interested and gives them something to ask you questions about and something to move the conversation forward with. And this is another, this link is in the handout as well. So you can read a little bit more about it. There's more ideas. Those are the ones that I kind of like the best. So now the day has come. How can you make the most of your time during the virtual event? So make sure everything's working for you. Don't add to your stress by being late for the event if you can help it. You want to make sure you know where the link is to connect. I hate it when I get a link and there's not a link in my calendar and I've got to go searching through emails and I feel so stupid. So don't be like that. Then make sure you don't have to install software. Like you're using a new platform and suddenly you've got to install software and you're going to miss part of the event. For audio, it's always safe to mute yourself until you'll be speaking, just in case the dogs start barking behind you or whatever's happening in your life there. And for video, I kind of tend to follow what others in the group are doing. So if most people don't have video, then I turn mine off. And if most people have it on, then I put it on. So I just kind of follow the group with that one. When setting up your name in most of these platforms, you might consider adding your location, depending on what the event is. I mean, if you're at the Rochester Chapter meeting, they're probably all from Rochester. Maybe that's not so exciting. But if you're in a summit event, you probably meet a lot of different people. And so maybe it's cooler to add your location. Some people like Melissa, she's got her pronouns in there. and it's respectful. It's a nice thing to do. I think Vicki has done hers as well. Or if you're like me and you have a company name, maybe you could put that there. Like if I were smart, I would have said Kelly Schrank, bookworm editing services on my name. But I didn't follow my own advice. I find that some events do it more than others. If I'm in an entrepreneur's event, a lot of times I tend to see the company name afterwards. So some platforms have ways to applaud or add smiley faces or raise your hand. So if you can get there a little early, it's nice to look around the platform to see what's available and to take advantage of that. And then check who's on the call. Do you know anyone? You can say hello in the chat, and most of the events, most of the platforms are working in. If you go to the chat, there's a 2 that goes to everyone, but then you can also pick people and you can just say, oh, hi, Jamie, it's nice to see you today. And then it's also good to know who's speaking or who's facilitating. So if you have to ask a question, you can, just like if you were in person, it's a nice touch if you were to say, oh, so-and-so, I have a question. So I liked this book by Karen Wicker. It's for introverts about connecting. She has a few good points that I put in here. And then she also writes about making a game of getting others to talk about themselves first as a way of getting out of talking about herself, but also to learn about people. So she has further, information to keep the conversation going, like I was saying. So if you know some of the attendees or speakers before the event, you could do a little research, and those you want to meet or talk to, you might use an interesting tidbit you discovered as an icebreaker. And lastly, in a virtual event, use your keen observation skills to notice people who have checked out, who aren't chatting, don't have video or audio on, aren't participating. And I tend to not try to engage them unless they're being engaging. At an in-person event, I would be much more likely to try to engage people who look, lonely and unsure. But in a video event, it's actually, they could be dealing with children or pets, half paying attention. Maybe they're on their phone and they don't have the same level of functionality. So, just kind of look around, see what's going on. But I like that she calls these, secret powers. We're really good at asking questions. We're really curious, and we're usually pretty observant. So once you do get into the situation where you're out chatting with people and you're trying to get to know people, one of the things that can be so hard when you get nervous when you're an introvert is to pay attention and kind of listen and respond to the discussion. You want to try to find some common ground as quickly as you can, and kind of have your own things to say about. You have some thoughts of your own about what's going on, the keynote, the conference, so that you can have better conversations with people. And one thing that I have to say is just balance your questions with answers. I find this really hard, to go through the Spanish Inquisition when you're having a conversation with somebody. Just be sure that it's not one-sided, that there's some give and take. And I don't know why I have to say this, but I end up having a lot of conversations that don't have that give and take. So I feel like I need to say it to people to just kind of keep that in your mind. And even though it's nice to find someone who has an answer to a question that's vexed you, which is great, to ask people questions, but also think about how you can help others. And having that in your mindset, do I know somebody that could help them? Do I know something that could help them? And I think we're a helpful bunch anyways, but just kind of keep that in your mind if you're struggling with, how to have a conversation with someone. So here's another nice little bonus here, some questions that you can use, and these are in the handout as well. And I feel like running out a little bit out of time, so I'm not gonna cover it too much, but just to let you know that it's there. And then something that's much easier in virtual events is remembering people's names. And when I'm in person, I always try to make sure that I repeat people's names in their mind and in my conversation with them, and try to introduce them to others, inserting relevant details to show you're paying attention. This is some of the kind of things that I like to do in person. It's actually easier virtual because we all have our names up on the little screen. So it's much harder to not catch people's names. But you want to make sure that you remember this kind of stuff for the after, which is the follow-up, which is the most important part of your networking. And the other thing that's nice about when you have these kind of a virtual networking event is you can take notes on everything, and it's not awkward at all. When I meet people in person, I get their business card, and as soon as I walk away from them, I'm like, writing some notes on it. But in a virtual event, it's really easy. I don't have to hide anything. So it's another way that it's much better, the virtual event, much easier to do some of this. So, who's read Quiet by Susan Cain? It's a great book, especially if you're just discovering, like, oh, am I an introvert? Like, what does that mean? This is a great book for that. So some of the things, that you might want to talk to people about if you get the chance, kind of start with your similarities. You're at a conference, you're STC members, you're interested in tech comm. But at least you have a start there. And then you can also look for differences. There's lots of opportunities to ask questions when you have differences. So if somebody's got a different background, different type of job, you can see what kind of future goals you have. Maybe you're working towards an associate fellow, or you're working on the CPTC certification, or you're attending Summit. And then ask people what they do outside of work. You might find you have some of the same hobbies or interests, or they might do something you have never heard of. Because technical communicators, I'm finding, are like really an eclectic bunch. So share your story, reveal a bit of personality, instead of simply reciting the bare bones. As an introvert, like I said, I know I struggle with this as well, but just kind of give people something to latch onto, something to ask you about. And so this one is kind of funny because we're a little out of time, and you have the slides, you have the handouts. I'll let you read this on your own. But this list starts negative. Don't make these mistakes. If you're terrible at networking, this is why. But many of the bullets that are in the actual article link to a positive article on how you can improve these things. And I really like what they say about remembering people's names, because I included it, and how to start a conversation. So those links are all in the handout, and I would suggest, if you're at all concerned, you'd go there. But I'm hoping that most of us have seen these familiar traits, particularly in others they've met, not us, right? So moving on to the after. And when you've made the most of the event and your energy is draining, just go ahead and leave. It's okay. You don't have to be there from beginning to end. If you have goals, you want to try to meet those for yourself. But if you've met some people and you've made some connections, you've gathered some names to connect to on LinkedIn, then your work is done. You don't have to feel bad about leaving. When you've come with a plan and you work the plan, it's good. So, follow up. Why would you go to all the trouble and the stress of going to a networking event and not reap the benefits? It's like you're missing that last little step, like this guy in the picture, that can make you successful. So follow-up to me is an essential part of the networking cycle, the networking experience, as I called it. The people often forget, probably because they're so relieved the event is over, and they're just like, I'm out of here and it's over. But this is actually the other part of the process that I was saying before, that we as technical communicators should be better at. We're constantly following up on projects at work. We're good at communicating with others via email. So what's the problem? If someone doesn't respond back, okay, and then if someone does, which I don't know, maybe that's more painful for some people, but you just keep in touch with them. I mean, I'm not suggesting you connect with everybody you ever meet. I'm saying if there's somebody you had a nice conversation with, you seem to have some interest, you seem to have, some kind of connection, some kind of vibe, that you enjoyed the conversation, then keep in touch with them, and make them a part of your network. And I find the easiest way to do this is through LinkedIn. A lot of people are on LinkedIn. Um, if they're on LinkedIn and you're on LinkedIn, you just connect, and that's a great way to be to keep up with them and them to keep up with you. Um, if you're going to connect with me, those of you who I'm not connected with, send a note. I get so many connection requests at this point. If I don't know you and you don't have a note, I'm not going to connect. Even if all you say is, I saw your session on networking, I'd like to connect. I'll connect with you, but I have to have something. So what I like, what's nice is if it's a nice note with some pertinent details. Oh, it was great to talk to you about baseball. I don't know, because that picture, the last picture made me say baseball. And then just ask connect. It doesn't have to be complicated. And if you didn't get to meet folks that you want to get to know, maybe things were um, just didn't work out, and you feel weird connecting to them because you didn't really talk to them yet, then you can still go to LinkedIn and you can follow them. And then maybe you can get to know them that way, see what they post, what they have going on. You can comment on their post, maybe start a virtual conversation that way. And if they're not on LinkedIn, which I realize some people are, if they're not on LinkedIn or you're not on LinkedIn, you could just send them an email. Of course, you'd have to ask for the email because otherwise, I don't know how you would get it. But again, include a nice note, some pertinent details about the conversation. But try to take that next step. And then keeping in touch. That's this next step after that. As I said, LinkedIn makes this much easier, but you can email people, you can schedule calls, you can schedule Zoom meetings. I feel like this is becoming less weird now, that people are all working remote. I'm old school. I like holiday cards, but once you get to know people better. And then some other ideas for this is kind of a bonus material, and this is something that I'm just seeing during the pandemic. If you can't find a networking event that works for you, make your own. I'm seeing this more now, small groups gathering at an individual's invitation rather than an organization. So I'm attending recently, as my schedule allows, a virtual co-working group with some medical writers. We check in at the beginning, at the end, then we work for a specific period, usually, an hour and a half to 2 hours. Working from home, it's nice to check in with people in a structured way who aren't, coworkers or clients. I've also attended some virtual happy hours, a couple with girlfriends from high school, a couple with colleagues that I would have seen at a conference normally. We would have gone to dinner at the end of the day. And then some, after conference kind of things, like I said. And then, of course, Zoom calls. A lot of people are setting up Zoom calls just for the fun of it. So here's another simple poll. What is the most important part of networking? And actually, I feel like there's kind of two answers to this. If anybody wants to put that in the chat. Nice. Some answers there. Before, during, after, what's the most important? Oh, all of it. You know, I'm going to say all of it. So you can tell I'm not actually in training because these are the worst questions and answers ever. Um, but in summary, do the necessary research to find the right events, prepare, do the right preparation, go into the event ready to network. Then during the event, use your secret powers and what you've done in your preparation to have a great event. And lastly, after the event, don't forget to follow up and stay in contact with your new friends. And while in the poll, all of these answers are correct, D is the best answer. The last one, I feel like it's the most important because if you don't follow up and stay in touch, you kind of wasted your time unless you keep going to a lot more events. You just end up kind of seeing people over and over again, which is fine too. So this chat, I don't think it was as busy as I've seen in the past, but do we have any questions, Vicki? Anything that people were chatting about?
So we don't have questions per se, but during the part of the presentation where you were talking about before the event,
Yeah.
getting your story together, a couple of us commented. Marcia said that she prepared a persona profile for herself so that she would know who she is, right?
I love it.
Yeah.
That's like
And
the perfect training answer. Yeah, go ahead.
so that was Marcia.
Thank you.
And Lewis, Disney Lewis, I guess I like to call him that. He said, I work as a writer, a technical writer and technical manager, but my side gig is about writing books about Disney and Imagineering. So
Yes.
you could tell, I've met Lewis and talked to him before. You can tell where his passion is.
Yeah.
And if you are interested in learning about this passion, he's going to be at Spectrum.
Yes.
Yes, I'm actually going to be at the unconference too. So I'm not talking about Disney
Nice.
at that. I'm leading a couple discussions about some other stuff. Well, I submitted topics for discussion. I haven't heard back if they're on the list or not, but I
Me
assume, right? But yeah, if anyone who wants to get in touch, I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free, please.
Excellent. And the links to Conduit, Spectrum, and the Southwest, I've forgotten what the mini conference are in the chat. And we encourage you guys, now that we have all of the networking skills in our toolbox, we're ready to go to a remote conference. So yeah, Lewis says networking is about more than just collecting contacts. It's not a body count thing. I liked the way, Kelly, how you talked about sometimes you walk away with deep relationships, even if there's just a few.
Well, and that came in response, honestly, to her point about following up. Like if you're just going to add check marks and tallies, there's not a lot of point to it, right? So
right. Yeah, and I didn't go into a lot of how to follow up. That would be a good thing to add, maybe another little bonus material about what kind of things to follow up. I mean, a lot of people, if you have things for people, like if you have an article to share or a link to share or a book recommendation, like those kind of things let you stay in contact with people. But you're right, I didn't really talk about how to keep up with people other than that first initial, like just try to make that first contact. That's a good first step. But yeah, there's definitely a keep in touch after that kind of stuff. Thanks.
And John has a testimonial for Lou's Disney workshop.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, John.
Right.
You'll have to.
So yeah, we can keep chatting as long as you want, but I thought I would put this up here. And everything is pretty much in the handout. So.
And as a sort of testimonial, I met Kelly at Spectrum, and I first met her as watching her do this, and then we met and chatted, and we've connected on LinkedIn and have stayed in touch. So please do the same if you're not already. I think most everybody here is connected with you anyway, but it's nice to build a network of people outside of the people that you directly work with to share experiences. It's part of it is a venting opportunity, right? Because at conferences you can say, I can't believe the people
understand you.
Right, exactly. We empathize better.
Right.
Thanks so much, Kelly. I have to run to another meeting, but this was great.
Yeah. Well, thanks for attending, Lou.
Look forward to seeing you.
Yeah, we'll be at Spectrum together.
Yep.
Cool.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording and then we can have open chat.
Okay.